Hi, welcome to Raj Life. Today I'm going to explain you about the business analysis life cycle because business analyst is a kind of role which is prominently used in application development when we are working on the requirements of the customer. So the life cycle, what is that I'm going to explain today? It's something completely focusing on the project-based applications because based upon the requirement of a particular customer, application development will be taken place. So project based is what generally the idea which I am focusing more on. These are the different life cycle processes which will be there, which are as follows. The first one is to plan and prepare. The second to discover the current state, followed by the future state. At the same time, developing and managing requirements. Apart from that, designing, build and testing and transitioning and supporting. These are the different stages are there in business analysis life cycle from the project based context. When you try to understand planning and preparing, where we need to understand the goals of the sponsor, because for any project, there will be a project sponsor who is going to fund for that. So understanding about the sponsoring goals is what generally comes under the planning. There is first thing. And second, we need to identify the resources followed by the availabilities. What are the resources? These resources can be classified into two parts. One is technical resource, followed by the manpower resource itself is concerned. Followed by this, we require to have some team who are working really needed to work in the project development. Apart from that, whoever are the people who wants to work on the team should have to define the roles, what kind of roles and responsibilities they are going to render. Followed by this, we need to identify who are the key stakeholders. To do stakeholders engagement, in order to perform stakeholder engagement, of course, there are two things we follow. So one is stakeholder identification is what we have to do, followed by this stakeholder analysis and management is what we do here. So these are the generalized activities which normally being a business analyst will be performed in the planning and as well as preparing phase. Here, in order to have this clear understanding about this, these are the deliverables which being a BA we need to do. One is about the vision statement has to be prepared because for every organization, there will be a vision. In order to reach that vision, there will be a mission will be there, followed by the goals and objectives, strategies, and as well as tactics. So vision statement is essentially important. So vision statement has to be prepared by the BA team. At the same time, initial project scope as well as the time and budget of the project is also equally required. Along with that, we need to create a project charter so that people will know about the project well in advance. Followed by this, we need to define the roles, something relating to the stakeholders about their importance and all. There is a matrix called RACI matrix, which normally to analyze and manage stakeholders throughout the project, like responsible, accountable, support, consultant, and informed. That's what generally the technique which normally analysis and management, this RACI matrix is being used to refine the roles, apart from the roles of application development. The next stage is called discover current state, where we need to identify the subject matter experts who are really involved in it. At the same time, we must be knowing about the stakeholders as well as the concerns and as well as issues what they have. Followed by this, we need to map the current state process and as well as the systems, because for example, sometimes customer is using an existing application where they want to add some enhancing some features and functionalities to the existing stuff. So for that, we need to understand the current state of processes, the kind of systems and as well as data, what is that they were using. Apart from that, we need to understand the kind of policies as well as the procedures and as well as the governance process to be followed. Along with that, we need to understand about the kind of levels of application development, what is that we need to do by understanding the current state. To understand the current state with different stakeholders and all, we need to conduct some workshops, something like chat sessions will be used here. Followed by this one-on-one interviews will be taken with some green people. Along with this, we need to understand about the problem statement, because unless until if you don't understand the problem statement, providing solutions would be difficult. Next, we have to create some process maps and as well as system diagrams. This is all something relating to visualization of requirements or visualization and as well as understanding about the needs, all that stuff. Along with that, we need to know about the kind of glossaries and terminologies, because depends on the kind of domain, it varies. Because for example, some projects will be in healthcare, some may be from banking, finance, insurance, retailing, right? Manufacturing, all that. So those terminologies and all, everything. So that if you know, it is more easier, convenient for the people to understand. That is where generally current state understanding is required. Followed by current state understanding, we need to define the future state, wherein we need to map the future state of systems and processes, where we need to define the access as well as the alternatives, what is that it is required here. At the same time, whenever you are trying to map the future state, we need to assess the impacts. What are the possible impacts do we have, and how to minimize the risk? Because unless until if you don't know that, if you don't follow and as well as understand in the assessing of impacts and all, what are the possible threats we come across and how to overcome won't be known to us well in advance. So assessing of impacts and all, everything is required. Along with that, we need to define the prioritization based upon the criteria as well as the scoring basis. In order to do this defining of future state, we have to create some process maps and as well as system diagrams, followed by the data models. At the same time, user story mapping is also will be doing when you follow agile practices. Normally in the field of traditional model, you being a business analyst, we don't prepare user stories, all that. But where we are going for agile environment nowadays, which we are using, user story mapping, and as well as one should understand about MVP as well, because the kind of minimum viable product which customer is expecting, so that we'll be knowing about the actual state of requirement which customer has. Based on that, the full life cycle of the application will be developed accordingly. This is where generally defining future state stands for. Followed by future state, we need to develop and managing requirements, wherein we need to share the requirements, validate the requirements. At the same time, we need to obtain approvals from the related stakeholders also. Along with this, we need to track the changes which if there is any requirements taken place, because whenever the requirements we have taken, there are possibilities that we need to change the requirements in between. So tracking the changes in requirements should also be done. So for that, we have to prepare different use cases, because these use cases, if we have for a development team, it is useful even for a testing team to compare when they are going to do requirement traceability matrix and all that. So this is being used for. This is where generally these use cases and all everything are used. At the same time, we will be knowing about the user stories well in advance. What are the different user stories are we doing in reference to the agile model? Apart from that, we must be knowing about what are the different wireframes and mockups to be prepared, because some sort of prototyping is needed essentially. Followed by this, we need to list out the requirements and as well as the specifications here as well. So these are the developing and managing requirements which we need to understand. So once we have developed and managing the requirements, that has to be designed it, wherein we need to participate in the designing and implementation and testing of the project. At the same time, we need to update the requirements based upon the designs, what solution architect or someone has to be designed here. Followed by this, tracing the results of the requirements by managing and as well as migrating data is essentially needed. To do that, generally designing documents, something like high-level and low-level design documents will be prepared. Apart from that, preparing some test cases with the help of testing team will also be done. Followed by this, even testing team will be initiating this requirement traceability matrix, wherein being a business analyst, we will be doing this as well. Last but not least, transition and support, where we need to understand and plan the change management process, if anything is there in reference to the changes happens in the project. At the same time, whatever the possible and necessary training to be provided should also be given here. Followed by, is there any kind of support externally to be provided, has to be given. Along with that, we need to plan the future maintenance of requirements in order to retain the customer is important for it, because in any business, retaining the customer is required, so that in order to retain the customer for a long time, wherein to get new customers and all, understand and as well as the future maintenance of requirements of a customer is essentially needed. So for that, we have to prepare some change management plan, so that we could know about what are the changes customer is expecting us to do, and how best this can be done is what we do here. Followed by this, there is some training plan to be prepared, because end users has to use this application in a quality manner. So the necessary training, preparing some user manuals are needed. At the same time, support procedures and assessment has to be done accordingly. So this is the complete life cycle about business analysis. It is in reference to the project-based itself is concerned. If you have any queries as well as the training needs, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you. Bye.